Dear colleagues, dear friends, as per the previous correspondence from our General Secretary, Marius Vizar Jr., the purpose of this presentation is to provide national federations with a summary of the new Sport Integrity Framework. This PowerPoint presentation sits as part of the consultation period for national federations ahead of the FITEQ General Assembly to be held virtually on Saturday, 12th of December 2020. At the General Assembly, this will not be discussed. It will be discussed straight after at the Extraordinary General Assembly as agenda item number 4. The FITEQ Sport Integrity Framework is composed of two strands, integrity and anti-doping. Integrity and anti-doping apply side by side, where integrity reflects the values of the International Olympic Committee and the Olympic movement. Anti-doping is a reflection of the rules of the World Anti-Doping Agency, recorded in the WADA Code. On the one side, the integrity half includes 4 integrity policies, starting with the Code of Ethics as the basis of all other frameworks, then the Equality and Anti-Discrimination Policy, Safeguarding and Welfare Policy, and the Anti-Corruption Policy. On the other side, the FITEQ anti-doping rules reflect the WADA Code. Finally, the Disciplinary Committee applies the disciplinary policy for violations of the integrity policies. The FITEQ anti-doping rules include its own set of sanctions, disciplinary procedure, and appeal mechanism. Having a sport integrity framework is vital for FITEQ and Teqball. Firstly, the framework aligns FITEQ with the best practices of good governance in accordance with the regulations required by ASWAF, which is the Association of Summer Olympic International Federations. Secondly, the framework ensures FITEQ's position as an international federation in the event of any form of wrongdoing, whether it occurred negligently or intentionally. The framework ensures that FITEQ remains transparent, honest, ethical, moral, and lawful. The full integrity framework applies to all FITEQ members, including national federations, executives, officers, athletes, coaches, and referees. The framework, however, does not apply to those outside of FITEQ's direct jurisdiction, such as event organizers, volunteers, and third parties. However, as per the framework and standard practice in the industry, strict liability is applied in relation to fans and spectators. The anti-doping rules regulate the fight against doping and create a comprehensive system that determines what is considered as doping, the consequences of doping, and the related sanctions. The appeal mechanism in case of violations and the responsibility of stakeholders is also determined. The anti-doping rules are composed of 5 major parts. Articles 1 through 4 outline the prohibitions and violations. Article 5 through 8 describe how the rules are monitored and the results management process. Articles 9 through 13 outline the consequences of violations and the appeal mechanism. Articles 14 through 17 concern issues of reporting, implementation, and education. Articles 18 through 22 prescribe the roles of various stakeholders. A brief outline of what constitutes as an anti-dope ADRV is necessary. While the presence of a prohibited substance in an athlete sample is the most common type of ADRV, it is important to remember that there are other ways that an athlete or athlete support personnel can be considered having committed a violation. The list is exhaustive and includes, found in Article 2, the presence of a prohibited substance in an athlete sample, use or attempted use of a prohibited substance or method, refusal to submit to sample collection after being notified, failure to file athlete whereabouts information and missed tests, and then, starting from this point, the remaining violations may include athlete support personnel and others who are not the athlete, such as tampering with any part of the doping control process, possession of a prohibited substance or method, trafficking a prohibited substance or method, administering or attempting to administer a prohibited substance or method to an athlete, complicity in an ADRV, prohibited association with sanctioned athlete support personnel. Moving on to the other half of the framework, the integrity policies are drafted in a similar manner and therefore have common principles. The purpose of this is for better transparency, clarity, and stability. All of the policies include at least the definition of rule violations, a description of the burden and standard of proof, education and training requirements, compliance and monitoring, confidentiality, a reporting mechanism, and an investigation process. The Code of Ethics is the basis of all other integrity policies, laying the foundation and introducing them to FITEQ members. The Code of Ethics begins with the fundamental principles of fairness, integrity, responsibility, and respect. These are the core FITEQ principles. The scope of the Code of Ethics covers general conduct, integrity of competition, and integrity of governance. General conduct means the general respect for human rights and dignity. This section also lays the foundation for other policies. The integrity of competition is intended to protect FITEQ competitions and events by prohibiting corrupt practices. The section on governance lays down key provisions such as financial integrity, confidentiality, and reporting. The Code of Ethics also includes other important areas such as identifying the need for implementation, education, and the potential sanctions for non-compliance and violations. The safeguarding and welfare policy's aim is to protect the FITEQ community from any form of abuse and provide a safe environment. Violations of the policy include psychological abuse, physical abuse, sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and neglect. Some of these violations also carry civil effect, meaning that local authorities can prosecute as well. The equality and anti-discrimination policy is very straightforward. You should not discriminate anyone for any reason whatsoever. The policy intends to prohibit conduct in the form of language, gestures, or otherwise any action that is likely to offend, insult, humiliate, or intimidate, or in any way discriminate against players, player support personnel, match officials, or staff on the basis of any characteristic, view, belief, or status such as race, religion, sex, disability, or age. The anti-corruption policy ensures that all matches are contested on a level playing field. This means that the outcome and any eventualities that occur during the match are determined solely by the merits and skills of the competing players and teams and the respective player support personnel. This means it prohibits the following corrupt practices: betting, competition manipulation, and bribery. The anti-corruption policy also prohibits the misuse of inside information, failure to report, the failure to cooperate, or obstruct an investigation. The disciplinary policy provides for the assessment, reporting, fair and effective investigation, and as required, prosecution of violations of the sport integrity framework. Violations of the FITEQ anti-doping rules are governed by the rules themselves, and the results management is delegated to the International Testing Agency, or ITA. The disciplinary policy assures that at all times the principles of due process and fair trial are respected. The policy includes two important aspects. First, a matter that is decided before the Ethics and Disciplinary Committee at first instance, and second, the possibility to appeal the decision at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, or CAS. The disciplinary policy also outlines the possible sanctions in an exhaustive list. The list includes 12 different sanctions, ranging from a warning and reprimand to a fine or a match suspension, and even to bans from competitions or Teqball. Please keep in mind that the purpose of the disciplinary policy is to protect the rights and enforce the other rules. There are additional policies that complement the integrity half of the framework. The purpose of these policies is to protect the rights, the health, the financial stability, and the general circumstances of all of the members and athletes. These policies are the regulation on the status and transfer of athletes, pre-participation physical evaluation, policy for age categories and minimum age requirement, and the prize money policy. The purpose of the regulation on the status and transfer of athletes, or RSTA, is to build a framework for athletes to register with clubs, thereby enhancing the certainty for athletes with respect to their status. A brief summary of the RSTA. Article 2 determines the status of athletes as either amateur or professional. Article 3 requires that athletes are registered to participate in competition. They may be registered with a maximum of 2 clubs between registration periods, but only with 1 club at a time. Article 4 provides for the registration periods for 2 weeks in the winter and the summer at a time determined by FITEQ. Article 5 describes the transfer procedure determining the requirements and the fees. Articles 6 through 10 include the protection of minors, dispute resolution, loans, and the enforcement of disciplinary sanctions. The pre-participation physical evaluation is a medical document. Its purpose is to assess the health of athletes and minimize all risks. The PPE consists of 3 parts: a guide from FITEQ, a simple form for domestic use, and a comprehensive form required for FITEQ events. The PPE is only a recommendation, however, the comprehensive form is mandatory for major events such as the World Championship. Key parts of the PPE include that it must be completed and signed by a physician or doctor, or as required by national law. It is the responsibility of national federations for athletes to complete the forms domestically. It is recommended to complete it at least once a year. There are also pre-screening questions with regards to COVID-19, a medical history risk assessment, and special attention paid to heart, hips, neck, spine, lumbar, knees, and ankles. The policy for age categories and minimum age requirement is necessary for the development of Teqball, but also for the safety of athletes. For instance, it is important to note that organized competition for under 12 category is not recommended for health concerns. While the age groups are also determined for each competition category, the minimum age for the World Championship remains 16. The prize money policy stems from a decision of the Executive Board on September 20th, 2020, as it intends to standardize the distribution of prize money between the athletes, clubs, and national federations. By standardizing the distribution, FITEQ is able to create a level playing field and promote the development of Teqball. The distribution of prize money is intended to fund the development by clubs and federations. Key points are that it concerns any official FITEQ organizer-owned event. The distribution is the athlete receiving 50%, the club receives 40%, and the federation receives 10%. Athletes without a club have 6 months to designate one, otherwise, if no club is designated, FITEQ is entitled to the amount. If there is no national federation in the territory, the share of the prize money will be kept in escrow on a separate account by FITEQ until such time that a national federation is established and recognized by FITEQ. It is important to know what FITEQ's role is in all of this. FITEQ has various responsibilities and obligations in relation to the framework. First, FITEQ must adopt the water code and integrity policies, thereby establishing clear rules and regulations to fight for clean sport. Second, FITEQ is responsible for also implementing the established framework among its members and monitoring the application of the rules. A high number of rule violations occur because of the lack of information stakeholders have. Therefore, to keep the sport clean and make sure the framework is effective, FITEQ must appropriately and reasonably educate its members. Finally, monitoring entails both the testing of athletes and the monitoring of member compliance. In addition, this involves an appropriate reporting mechanism and support available to all members. In addition to FITEQ's responsibilities and obligations, FITEQ members and affiliates also have their own responsibilities and obligations. First, FITEQ members and affiliates must know and adhere to the rules at all times. Secondly, they must report any issues that they see, experience, or know of. Only this way can FITEQ create a better space by identifying all of the issues. Education is also very important and is a responsibility for all members. They must make sure that awareness is raised so that everyone around them also knows the rules. Finally, federations and clubs have an additional responsibility to implement the FITEQ rules and to monitor compliance. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, please contact integrity@fiteq.org.